Let's just do the Pledge of Allegiance really quick while we're here. Steve, can you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I guess the first one we want to start with, Mr. Town Manager, is a change to the RIB warrant article.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Mr. Chairman, so that the folks at home can see what we're doing. Basically, the only change associated with this, based on some engineering estimates, is a change to the amount. We're requesting 3.8 million rather than 3.5, and this is based on some engineering estimates prior to the bid opening. Mr. Ford is here to be able to answer any questions that you may have relative to the topic.
I have a question.
Yes, Steve.
The question is Dave going to be the clerk of the works, or is there someone else going to be responsible?
So Dave can speak to this, but I believe that the previous conversation was Dave would have a engineer on site that would do some of the work relative to this, but Dave would oversee the entire project. Dave, could you follow up on that for Mr. Johnson, please?
Sure. On this project, which is being done in accordance with New Hampshire DES regulations and state revolving fund, it's also as federal regulations, we have a professional engineer, underwood engineers that are designing and up the bid. They have a resident engineer who will be on site for most of the time and taking pictures and as-built and verifying that all the work is done in accordance with the plans and specifications. There'll also be engineers back in the office who are reviewing these submittals on materials and equipment, things being used. So they'll also there. Then I have a role as a client, so I have to see everything, making sure that the engineer is doing their job, as well as being involved, technically, because I've been here for 14 years, in with regards to change orders, unforeseen issues, dealing with normal type of construction problems and others, and especially the state. So I'm involved keeping them updated on what's going on with construction. So I still have a major role. We'll spend quite a bit of time. The clerk of the works, typically we call the resident engineer, will be a contract position for me.
Is he going to be here, so he's going to be here every day? Like, is he, once this project starts, Dave, is he just going to be showing up every day?
He will be coordinated with the contractor. So for instance, if the contractor is waiting materials and is not going to work a day, he won't be here. He'll be here shadowing the contractor, making sure that the contractor does his job. So it is a full-time position, but it doesn't mean to be every day because the contractor may not be doing something every day.
And is it a full-time position? Is he paid by us, by the town, or is he paid by the contractor?
He is works underwood engineers. Is our engineering company that's done all the work, and they will have a resident engineer that works for them. So yes, the town will be paying that resident engineer through underwood engineers. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any other questions on the changes to the RIB warrant article?
This may be a little preliminary, but
Yes, sir.
I noticed there's no recommendations by the Board of Selectmen on any of these warrant articles. Are we going to cover that later?
So the reason that there is no recommendation at this point on the bonded warrant articles is because the Board of Selectmen will be holding the public hearing tomorrow evening on 3 of the bonds. I believe it's 3 of the bonds. And then on Friday, they'll be holding a public hearing at 4 o'clock to discuss and vote on the bond for the dock repairs.
So we should be seeing their vote on the non-bonded articles. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
We should be seeing their vote on the non-bonded warrant articles, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions in the RIB warrant article?
I've got a question for Dave.
Yes.
board were to ask what's different with this project as compared to the initial project that ended up in the lawsuit, is there a way to explain that?
Well, how to define quickly? I'll give it a shot, because I think it's pretty important that people understand this, and sometimes I forget that not everyone has followed this project, which has been my kind of main thing for the last 14 years.
Right.
So, to put it in simple terms, we purchased a piece of land in which we thought we had this perfect geological formation with a lot of sand. So the tree network goes into that formation at the top. It goes through 60 feet of unconsolidated sand, and it filters out all the phosphorus from the first 2 feet. Then we have 58 feet going down the bedrock, and then kind of blends with the regional water table, and meanders downhill to 19 Mile Road. So that's the project we thought we had, and we thought that it was going to work. And what happened is the engineers did not tell us the whole story. When the water started traveling down the hill, it hit wetland soil. So the soil changes underneath. We have beautiful soil. If we start heading down the slope 300 feet, we have 300 feet of very wetland soil. The water can't make it through that soil. It has the power of path of least resistance. It now is coming up the roots and then starting to create channels. That's where our failure occurred. So the fix is to capture the water before it hits the bad soil. Still flowing freely. Now let's get all this treatment we want. So we have an infiltration trench where we're now going to collect the water. We're going to bypass the area that's poorly drained. Then as we get closer to the brook, we're going to reintroduce it into the ground. We're going to exfiltrate it now. We're going to put it back into the ground in an upland area. And then we're going to go underneath the wetlands and basically have what we call an engineered natural solution, which will take it into a soil that can take the water and then introduce it to the thread of the brook, right at the bottom of 19 Mile Brook. So now the water, the treated effluent, will be a path staying in the ground until it hits the brook, which is how it was originally permitted. And the fix now is we've figured out what the break was, transition of soils, and simply is now putting trenches to bypass it, we reintroduce it, and obviously a little more complicated than that. Does that seem to make sense there?
Yeah, as scary as it sounds, I did kind of follow the gist of your explanation. I'm just, like I said, just in anticipation that the general voter might have the same question in mind as to what's different this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Can I just finish the project? Also includes restoration of all areas that have been damaged, and that's a very crucial part. So that when the project is done, we want to restore everything so it comes back to its natural state. We are working with the Tuckerborough Conservation Commission, which is the town of Tuckerborough, in which part of this warrant article will go to fund monitoring of the 19 Mile Brook and developing a plan to assure that the whole watershed is restored back to its original condition, if not better. That's a commitment we've made, and it's included within the dollars here that we would do that.
Thank you, David. I just got a couple of questions here. What's the life expectancy of this RIB when it's all done? How long can we depend on to work? And
We do the analysis, we did the analysis based on a 20-year life cycle, but the reality is it should last 50 to 100 years when we have this fixing. Because it's going through the environmental review and the state revolving fund, it does have to go through that analysis. So the payback is based on 20 years, but there's no reason why everything we're installing should go 50 years, if not longer.
so will we be clear of all the DES requirements or contingencies that they have on the town now once this is all done?
We have a specific administrative order by consent, and this will resolve that problem. If all of a sudden there's new regulations that pertain to other things, then we have to separate that. Regarding the effluent disposal and our long-term solution, this contract is intended to meet that administrative order, which we've been working on for 4 years, going on 5 years now. So this will resolve that specific issue. We have other issues with the treatment plant, which right now we're in compliance, but it's something that we would be concerned about when we're talking about sewer pump stations. So we have other wastewater needs, but with regards to the effluent disposal, this should settle the issue for a long time.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? with reference to the RIB warrant article. Okay, let's move on. Recreational dock warrant article.
So, Mr. Chairman, worked with the Board of Selectmen on this after the last budget meeting. We took your feedback, and we kind of went back to the drawing table a little bit. So, right now, as we speak, the contractor is actually mobilizing to do the repairs to Dock A at the town docks. We are coming forward at this point and asking, breaking these warrant articles into two distinct and separate warrant articles. The first one here is recreational dock repairs bond, and this is to raise $850,000 for reconstructing and upgrading of docks B, C, D, E, F, and G. If this warrant article passes, essentially what will happen is we will issue a change order for the contractor who is working on the Dock A right now to perform some repairs to docks B, C, and D, so that we would have those done for the springtime. The repairs to E, F, and G would most likely take place in the fall into the winter of 2021. If you have any questions, myself or Mr. Ford may be able to answer them for you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Town Manager, is the application of the capital reserve account and the unspent money on that warrant article 14 or 17 from last year, is that going to happen? Is that part of this whole deal?
So that's part of the Dock A repairs that are taking place right now.
Ah, okay, so we're paying for that from the existing fund
Correct.
that are sitting. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the recreational dock repair bond for $850,000? Okay, any questions on the recreational boat extension for $300,000, extending the Wolfeboro Bay docks B, C, D, and E? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we'll move on. Next one is the Pop Whale and Ice Arena building repairs.
So, Mr. Chairman, this has a significant change. And quite frankly, one of the items that we are running into at this point is escalation of costs for projects. When we reached out to the vendor to verify the pricing that we had in place, the vendor simply wouldn't lock in on the estimated prices, which threw all kinds of issues up in the air. We did come through CIP this year with an estimate of $850,000 for this work. However, I think that what we need to do at this point is stop, develop a much clearer scope of work with the vendor, so that when we come forward next year, the vendor is actually on board with us, providing us an estimated cost of the repairs. We can try to answer any questions that you may have on the topic.
That original $850,000, did that include the $125,000 for engineering? Was that included in that $850,000?
So some of that would have been in there for this type of work, but not all of it.
Okay, since this is an enterprise fund, I guess I'm wondering why some of that isn't being charged back to the enterprise fund itself.
Yeah, so the Board of Selectmen discussed this very heavily, and we came away that the enterprise fund simply cannot absorb this type of work, this type of bonding. So the result was, look, we need to differentiate between capital projects in maintaining our existing buildings and structures so that we maintain the structural integrity of the facility and keep the buildings safe. The operational end of it, we feel, will fall onto the Pop Whale and Ice Arena, and we actually have got a separate warrant article in place which asks the voters to authorize the Board of Selectmen to utilize general fund warrant articles to pay for capital expenses associated with the Pop Whale and Ice Arena. I hope that answered your questions.
Yeah, thank you.
If not, the Board of Selectmen may be able to provide more insight.
Anyone for the Board of Selectmen want to make any comments?
Hi, this is Paul, John. How are you doing?
Was that Paul?
Paul?
It is. Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What you said, pretty straightforward. We're going to attribute capital costs to things that are town building related, which is this, and we are going to attribute capital costs to things that are due and proper to run an ice arena. We'll attribute that to the enterprise fund. Right now, it's doing an attribution of these costs directly to general fund.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, John.
Any other questions or comments concerning the Pop Whale and Ice Arena building repairs?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we're still looking for the correct numbers? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's 125,000 now, and not
So,
850.
yeah, what'll happen is this will give us a very specific scope of work that we will be ready to go with an updated RFP to get the work done. When we reached out to the vendor that provided us the price quoting for the CIP process, they would not give us an idea of what the estimated increases associated with this would be. And the only thing they did say is, we have seen substantial increases. The other thing that I would note is that was actually based on 2019 pricing.
Thanks. John, I assume we're talking Article 12.
Well, yeah, on the list it just shows Article, on mine it shows Article U, Pop Whale and Ice Arena building repairs, cash at the top of it.
I don't have it.
That 850,000 has been changed to a different article, which I guess is now 125.
Yeah, this one. That's this one.
It's not 125.
125.
Okay, that's why I was confused.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
This one is the referendum
Gotcha.
authorizing the Board of Selectmen to...
Okay, thank you. I'm set.
All set? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on. Establish a water resources non-capital reserve fund. Get different language, and the amount is $50,000.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have that on the screen, and I apologize to the Budget Committee out there for that one. Based on the feedback that we received from the Budget Committee at the last meeting, we did reach out to legal counsel. Legal counsel advised us that this should go through what's called a non-capital reserve fund. And it's based on RSA, so we've attached the RSA to that. We've become a little more specific in the best management practices, the engineering, the permitting, et cetera, to try and give the community a little more confidence in the warrant article and what the funds would be used for.
Okay, any questions on the Water Resources Non-Capital Reserve Fund? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we will move on. Yes, go ahead, John. I'm sorry, John, you're going to have to say that again a little bit slower. We couldn't make out what you were saying.
When you were talking about this letter, you had up there, or I saw on the screen, Article 12, which was at the beginning of the ice arena. In other words, it was on the scene.
Yes. Let me pull up the correct warrant article.
32. 23.
Okay, the correct warrant article is now in view. No, well, it was. So, as we alluded to bring this a little more specific, non-capital reserve pursuant to RSA 35(1)(c) for the purpose of a watershed management plan, including engineering, design, permitting, best management practices for stormwater drainage and nutrient mitigation, grant matching, and education.
You all set, John?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, very good, thanks. Okay, let's go to the last one.
could I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have specific projects in mind for this at this point? Does the Board of Selectmen have specific projects in mind? Because it talks about a watershed management plan, engineering, design, permitting, is there a plan to do that
So
specifically?
I can sit here and tell you that Mr. Ford does have a vision of a significant number of projects that this would fall under in the future. He anticipates this capital reserve fund growing over time so that we can deal with some of our stormwater drainage issues that go into the lakes. As far as specifics, I believe watershed management plans, I don't recall which, one of the board members may be able to tie this loose end up, but there is a body of water that does not have a watershed management plan, and then we've got to work on that. And then engineering and permitting, well, that ties in with the stormwater drainage and the best management practices so that we can alleviate some of this nutrient mitigation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I think Ms. Murray beat the meeting up first. When they go first, go ahead.
The one area where we really need an asset watershed management plan is Wolfeboro Bay and Back Bay. We just got some information on Back Bay that we have a high phosphorus level in Back Bay, so definitely those two areas need an asset management plan. The state is no longer giving 319 grant, so this is one that we're probably going to need to accumulate some funds in prior to us being able to pull off that management plan.
Thank you, Selectman Murray. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to a new warrant article. And this is the reorganization of the Director of Public Works. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $67,546 for the purpose of hiring a new Director of Public Works. Funding shall provide wage and wage-related benefits for this position effective on or after July 1st, 2021. The new Director of Public Works shall oversee the administrative, highway and streets, garage, solid waste, and building and grounds divisions. This position shall be funded through the general taxation. Further, on around July 1st of 2021, the current Director of Public Works and Director of Water and Sewer shall become the Director of Water and Sewer Utilities and shall oversee the water treatment, water distribution, sewer treatment, wastewater treatment plant divisions. In addition, the Director of Water and Sewer Utilities shall provide project management and engineering support to other town capital projects which may require project management, engineering, and permitting. This position is funded from the Water and Sewer Utilities budget. What do we have for questions on this one?
So we're asking for $67,546. And this basically ties back out with the proposal to bring on a new Director of Public Works through the operating budget. This takes it and puts it into the voters' hands to make the decision whether or not they want to have this position in place or not. with that stated, Mr. Chairman, any questions you may have, myself or the board may be able to answer.
I have one that comes to mind. Why doesn't it reflect, if I was looking at this as a regular voter, I would think that this was only going to cost us $67,546 to hire a new Director of Public Works, when actually that just represents 6 months of the salary, and the actual total salary from this new position with benefits appears to be $135,092.
That would be correct. I mean, I think that is self-evident by the fact that it's dated July 1. The operating budget goes into effect January 1 under an assumption that we have an assumed budget which is passed at deliberative session or not. And then moving forward, the year closes on December 31 of each year. So, I mean, it does not specifically say that, but I would think a reasonable person would say that's half a year's worth of salary.
So I was just going to suggest that maybe you could add, funding shall provide wage and wage-related benefits for half a year for this position effective on July 1st. That would be no question than what it actually is, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and you know, Mr. Chairman, the New Hampshire DRA, when they're conducting their review, they may actually recommend that language as well.
Thank you. Any questions from any members?
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead.
Is that John? Go ahead, John.
Okay, I have several comments here. Taking a look at the budget, there's an increase, and I can't, myself, I couldn't get a number, but I can figure out who the for the job down there, for the work. For example, the supervisors' wages of the works department was increasing $116,381, or 31%. I can't figure out who's getting what. Secondly, the increase of the 200 lines as proposed was $467,000. A good portion of that is the increase in job, but the other is $454,000. So the total increase proposed for the public works department, the 100 and 200 served, was $526,000 more. A little bit more than that. In addition, the urban's going to have a big job in the RID. Right? If there's $150,000 for somebody who worked day by day, that the job is done. So it looks like when the public works department, the 100, 200 served, to include the $150,000 for the higher engineer on site, $670,000. That is incredible. And then they ever find any sort of efforts to be able to get their money that's it's incredible. And what I'm going to remember, because the auditors haven't let me have it 15 years as a treasurer. I'm pretty good number. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, John. Does anyone else have any comments?
Yes,
Bob, go ahead.
one quick one. The net effect of this whole thing is if I multiply this times 2, $135,000 roughly is the actual increase over what we're doing right now as we speak.
That's what the increase will be
On an annual basis.
January of 2022 when the position becomes full-time.
So, but on an annual basis, we will
Yes.
increase the management salaries by $135,000 roughly.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make it clear that
Okay.
we're talking about 135 over what we're doing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
I have just a comment. With all due respect to the town manager and the board of selectmen, this seems to me as disingenuous as the letter that we received dated the 29th. We expressed our displeasure with how it went about, and here again, you want us to just put it in and accept it. So that's just my comment.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple comments. It would seem that if you're going to list the salary for Public Works, you should also list the salary for the other position, but it's silent on that. Also, you're creating an additional job for the director of water and sewer utilities, which is project management for other town projects. Now, I understand you're doing that because you have somebody who is going to do that. That's how you're defining the job description for the current person. If that person ever retires, does this mean you're going to hire a new person who would do both those roles? Because that's what you're asking the voters to require by doing it as a warrant article.
Yeah, I think it's very clear in the Tata and Howard report that the town of Wolfeboro should have its own engineer. That report outlines that. We feel that the Director of Public Works that manages the administrative highway, streets, garage, solid waste, buildings, and grounds divisions, we think that that department, while excellent, it needs somebody who's a little bit more hands-on. So that's why we're looking at that position, and, you know, to maintain the engineer as well. You know, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how much longer the incumbent will be here, and I'd love to be able to have some transition so that when this individual leaves, we're not all lost. So that's some rationale behind it as well.
Okay, but that doesn't really answer the question of what happens eventually. I mean, is this a permanent thing? The
Yes.
Director of Water and Sewer is always going to also do project management?
Yes,
That's the plan?
that is
And
the
if that
plan.
ever has to change, you do another warrant article? To say that's no longer going to be the case?
Well, once the positions are in place, I have the ability under town manager's RSA to be able to reorganize as needed. But for all intents and purposes, this plan seems like it's solid, and I think it'll work well.
Okay, I would make a comment, so where it says engineering support to other town capital projects which may require project management, did you say earlier that Mr. Ford would also be overseeing projects done under, what is it, Articles, what was it, 22 or 23?
So let me give you an example of a project that Mr. Ford might continue to work on. Route 28 project.
No, I want to cut you off. I just want to ask a specific question. When we were talking about the other warrant article that provides a non-capital reserve fund, you said Mr. Ford would oversee those projects. And if it's a non-capital reserve fund, it would seem those are non-capital projects. And it says here he'd oversee capital projects. So there's something of a discrepancy there.
So there is.
Not to nitpick, but it's kind of a nitpick. So
The one thing that I will say about that is, although the RSA does recognize non-capital reserve funds, New Hampshire DRA does not. They're considered the same thing, which is bizarre, but that's the way it is. And quite frankly, one of the things that we're going to observe in the coming years is an increase in that stormwater management and the mitigation of that. The regulations are getting tighter and tighter and tighter to protect those lakes. You know, so I would envision that this water and sewer utilities would be working hand in hand with the Director of Public Works in those stormwater best management practices. I wouldn't say it would be one or the other, but they certainly would be working in a partnership to be able to deliver a product.
Is stormwater management currently part of the water and sewer department?
It's all under Mr. Ford at this point, and I would say that no, it's more in the highways and streets and capital projects rather than water, sewer, utility.
Okay.
Okay, I just got a quick question. If this passes, all the salary for the employee, that's the water and sewer, water distribution and all that's, everything clumped together, all that salary will, and cost will be now transferred to the water and sewer users? You mean for the current director's position? No, if this passes, there's a line here that says, this position is funded from water and sewer. So I take it whoever is the new director of water and sewer and utilities, his salary, his benefits, his everything will be funded through water and sewer and come out of the other duties he may have that were associated to the highway department.
Yeah, so the director of water and sewer utilities would come from water and sewer as it's part of that paragraph. I'm sure that DRA will be looking to clean up that a little bit. In addition, one of the things that I heard pretty loud and clear through this budget process this year was that there was an ask to want to revisit how the allocation of supervisory salaries to the enterprise funds were actually allocated. So that's why that isn't listed very specific in a percentage point here, because I heard this committee tell me that you guys wanted the allocation method for supervisory salaries associated with the enterprise funds revisited.
Yeah, that's good, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, you mentioned that none of the warrant articles are approved by DRA.
That's correct. And that's been a fairly common practice in my time of doing this, that the DRA is reviewing the articles simultaneously to the hearings and bond hearings and whatnot.
Because what I'd hope to do is vote on whether we support these or not, but I guess I'm concerned because these may not be the actual warrant articles that are here for the deliberative session.
So you could be right, but the content, for all intents and purposes, will be the same, and the numbers will be the same. There could be some minor language change, some addition of some RSAs and whatnot, but this has been the practice that we've followed for a number of years from my experience.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
This position is funded for $67,546. That's a pretty specific number. Is that based on, the salary of an existing employee being elevated to this position, or being reassigned to this position? And if so, is this going to create a vacancy within the Public Works Department so that they would be bringing on, another employee?
So to answer the first part of your question, the number came from the amount which was removed by the Budget Committee in a previous meeting. So this coincides with the amount that was reduced to remove the position from the operating budget. Secondly, yeah, I'm going to encourage that staff apply for the position, but I don't know if we have anybody qualified for the position. That's why we'll go through a process and let the best candidate come forward. If we do hire somebody from within, that would absolutely open up a position from within, but we'll see what happens if the position is approved and who may be the successful candidate.
One
So
further.
that number will reduce at the deliberative session. You'd still have the ability, or could you make a decision then as to whether or not to advertise for that position and work within whatever assigned funding or given?
That's a challenging question, Brian, because it is specific to the date of July 1, and the possibility of DRA recommending that term of 6 months' worth of wages going in. You know, if this got brought down at the deliberative session, what I would do is I would scale that on a percentage basis to try and accommodate what we feel the salary should be for that position.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately your decision is to assign salaries to all the town positions within the budget. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so this will be a permanent position after December 31st, it continues, if it gets approved?
Yeah, so the way that this would work is once the position was approved, once the position is filled, the position is essentially full-time at that point.
Okay, because that's not really clear from the warrant article. I mean, is there any precedent for a warrant article of this nature to approve hiring somebody at a specific salary, and that person then becomes a permanent position, he's a permanent employee, he or she is a permanent employee, and it's a continuing obligation?
Yeah, many communities actually do this route rather than the operating budget route. And actually, we were recommended by the finance director. If you look at the spreadsheet she provided, she put a note on the bottom of it regarding the reallocation of wages, that an option would be to go with a warrant article for this. You know, I certainly could have put in there not to exceed $100,000, but we put back in what was cut.
Mm-hmm. I guess when I was asking, is there any precedent, I meant, is there any precedent in Wolfeboro for doing this?
I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a quick question, John.
Go ahead, John.
Is this warrant article in reaction to the fact that the recommended ratings were said that you would not support the additional burden in the warrant article, in the operating budget?
This warrant article is because we feel that this is the right thing to do to make our public works department the most efficient mode of operation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
when was the last time there was any addition in personnel to the Public Works Department?
I don't know if Mr. Ford is still here. I don't believe he is, but it has been a significant amount of time. Linda, would you have any idea?
Can answer that, Jim? I'm here.
Oh, Dave.
So, when I was hired back in December of 2006, there were two positions, Director of Public Works and Director of Water Sewer. They combined the two to hire. Since that time, we have moved some positions around, but we have not added any full-time people. We've had part-time positions, half-time positions, but the Public Works Department has reorganized the people we have. We're flexible, we move some people around, but we have not had an increase in 14 years.
You've had new truck driver positions, haven't you?
We hired a lot of people, we've had a lot of turnover in 14 years, yes.
Okay.
We've had a lot of truck drivers, operators, all positions have been hired. The total number, when I got here, there was 10 in Highland, we have now 9 in Highland. We have a split position, that's now, we still have the same numbers. I can show you where we were in 2006 and where we are now, same numbers. Except for one position, before we had 2 department heads, now there's only 1. So, and some of the positions have changed.
Okay, thank you, David. Any other questions? Okay, the only concern I have was we're supposed to vote on these warrant articles, whether we support them or whether we don't support them. And I'm just concerned that a period here and a comma there can very easily change the meaning or the intent of the article. So I don't know how you folks feel, how the committee feels about voting on these when they haven't been approved by DRA. Any comments from anybody?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't feel comfortable. I just don't.
When is the DRA going to make their
They're currently working on them, and I got to tell you, I am a little bit surprised because this has been the way that this has happened for a number of years. So
I don't think we've been told exactly what you told us. I never recall being told this by anyone else. Maybe they just took it for granted that we knew that, but I
understood. I will have to look at the schedule, Mr. Chairman, to see what the last day of voting that you can vote on these warrant articles are.
Yeah, it's not an attack on anybody's credibility or anything like that. It's just a calm here and a period there, and it can make a big difference on what the message is trying to be conveyed. Any other comments from people? Matt?
Could I ask a question about the question you asked? If we voted on them today and then they didn't get approved or a change was required, what would happen? Would we have to then go back and vote on them again?
Yeah, we'd have to look at them again,
Or would they just be removed entirely?
I don't think they'd be removed. They would just come through the changes. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen is going to review them again after DRA or if they're going to take it for granted.
Yeah, I mean, when I get the feedback and the final warrant back from DRA with the thumbs up that we're done, I forward it to the Board of Selectmen, and then we start the print or get it ready for print.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
with your permission, Casey, will raise her hand. You guys, Casey, you
Yeah, it's been my experience that the budget committee can vote on it at this point and have a last final vote of the deliberative session. So at this point, you're kind of voting on the intended purpose, the intended fiscal impact. If the comma or something changes, you have a chance at your deliberative session to do your final vote. So this is your pending vote going into the deliberative session. Same with the Board of Selectmen. They might not necessarily get back together again to vote after DRA puts a comment here or there, but they too can change their position at the deliberative session. So that's been my position.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't think, if my memory serves me correctly, have we had the opportunity to revisit warrant articles in the deliberative session in terms of voting? I don't think we have.
Well,
Have we? Am I mistaken?
we'll get a new set at the deliberative session. and the moderator will go through each warrant article, and then at the end of the deliberative session, we'll go through each one, and I'll say, does anyone want to change their vote?
Okay, so there is an opportunity.
Right, but unfortunately, the material that's gone out may have that it was 6-3 or whatever it is on it.
Exactly,
From
yeah.
our talks at
So,
this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if it helps the Budget Committee, the last day for the Budget Committee to deliver the budget and warrant article recommendations is January 21st, which is next Thursday.
Any other comments from members?
Well, we do have a meeting scheduled, if necessary, for the 14th. You say the 21st, Jim? Mr. Town Manager?
The 21st, but I mean, I don't,
John, this is Leanne. Can I make a comment?
Certainly, go ahead, Leanne.
I don't believe that the budget committee will be able to be any further past the 14th and make any deadlines per the statute, because unfortunately, we need to have a certain period of time between the posting for the public hearings, and we won't meet that requirement with the deadline being January, what did Jim say, the 19th? And I'm looking at the town meeting calendar dates right now for SB2 towns for 2021, which is what I believe Jim Pinio is referring to. So I just want to make it clear that I don't mind. The only reason why we can meet on Thursday, 14th, is because I noticed that the date of the 14th in the original public hearing.
So I don't think your DRA people are going to be able to meet those.
well, it's also interesting because it seems like this is a fairly consistent model, because the last day to post the warrant is the 25th. So it seems like it's a fairly common occurrence to have the Budget Committee vote on the warrant so that New Hampshire DRA knows what the vote by the Budget Committee is, so that they can complete the work.
Very good, then. So we want to proceed with the voting when we go tonight? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't hear you.
Linda Murray had her hand up. She wants to say something. Okay, we'll put her in.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda, I'm sorry.
I have a question, and I believe that it's the Board of Selectmen who are required to hold the bond hearing on the warrant articles, and that the Budget Committee holds the public hearing on the operating budget. So all you would have to do is notice the meeting, because you're not noticing a bond hearing for warrant articles.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, can you take a comment?
Is that Suzanne?
Yes.
Yeah, if you can just state your name, Suzanne. I know who you are, but the folks may not.
Yeah, Suzanne Ryan. Your next agenda that's posted indicates warrant articles and budget. I have held reserved comment on any of the discussions on warrant articles because I assume that at your next meeting at 7 o'clock was the time you would go through everything and allow for public comment then.
Yes, ma'am.
Not take your vote now without any public comment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Any other questions? Seeing none, do you have anything else, Mr. Town Manager?
I don't. If you guys have any questions for me, I will try to clarify. Not, I think it's 7 o'clock, correct?
Yeah, we'll do a motion to adjourn until 7 p.m. tonight.
Question?
Yes.
the other warrant articles we're not going over. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The balance of the warrant articles we are not going over?
It's my understanding that we'll have all the warrant articles at 7 o'clock. All the ones that we've done, we're done. There's no other ones. Is that fair? So we covered all the other ones. These are the
Okay, so
new,
what we were doing here tonight was reviewing the changes and/or new warrant articles. Is that correct?
these are the ones that we currently wanted to change.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about the other ones at 7. A motion to adjourn till 7 p.m.
So moved.
A second? Okay, roll call vote. Bob Tuffer? Yes. Bob Lohman?
Yes.
Steve Johnson?
Yes.
Matt Plash?
Yes.
Tom Bell, you with us? Okay, John Burt?
Yes.
Brian Black?
Yes.
And John McDonough votes yes. Motion adjourned is, we'll be back at 7 p.m., please.